course, I'm John Itis from Hudson County View, and I'm joined with Corey McDonald, and this wouldn't be possible without Mark Vucinic. So thank you to them, of course, for their continued commitment, and thank you everyone for taking time out of your busy campaign schedules for joining us. So for those of you that didn't ask, or those that didn't know, I just wanted to say very quickly, we're going to do a 60-second intro, and then from there on out, we're just going to do pretty much an hour and a half through of questions, 60-second answer, 30-second rebuttal if anybody's interested, and we're going to take a couple audience questions at the end if anybody wants to do that. So without further ado, we're just going to start at this side. We're going to let you guys do your intros. So feel free to lead us off, Sharma.
Hi, I'm Sharma Montgomery, 10D on the ballot. The things that I am focused on right now are the fact that the schools are overcrowded. Obviously, we have a lot of new building and new construction coming into town. There's going to be a lot of overcrowding. It's going to continue. We're going to need a new school soon. I think that's a very important thing. I think that we need people who can work together on the board for the common good and recognize that it's not about what I want to have happen in the schools. It's really about what I think that the people in general, Bayonne want, and that's what I am here to represent. And then most importantly, I think it's important that we have non-conflicted members of the board who can vote on every issue that comes in front of them. I think that makes the board more effective in the long run. So, thank you.
All right, excellent. And let's just keep moving down the line.
My name is Melissa Gutowski Rodriguez. I'm 3D on the ballot. I'm Bayonne born and raised, raising my son here now. Dante, he's 10. He is a special needs student and has gone through all the levels of our special education system, which we all know has some work to do. I'm currently the vice president of the Lincoln Community School PTO, a volunteer coach with the Bayonne Rec Youth Running Program, a volunteer parent advocate, and I'm proud recipient award of the Dan and Hughes Give Back Award and a Sharing Caring Award given by Lincoln Community School PTO back in 2017. I've been a retail general manager since the age of 21. I bring a lot of project management, talent management, budget and allocating to the table, which we know we're going to need with the expansion and growth of our community very soon. Spending the last 3 years attending Bayonne Board of Education meetings, I've learned what we're doing, what we're not doing, and what we can be doing, and I'm proud to say that I'm up here and really want to be a true representation and conflict-free for the community of Bayonne.
Perfect. 2 seconds to spare. Anthony, please proceed.
My name is Anthony D'Amico, ballot position 2D. First, I want to say thanks, John, for putting this together.
Of course.
I think it's needed for any sort of election. Those that don't know me, I'm a parent here in Bayonne. I've been here for about 12 years now. 2 children in Henry Harris District, where I'm also the VP of the PTA. I also run the City Rec Wrestling Program. I'm also a volunteer assistant coach with the high school program, as well as managing for Cal Ripken for a number of years, which now with the merger, it's going to be exciting, the Bayonne Youth Baseball and Softball. I'm also a member of the charitable organization of the Knights of Columbus, so I try to give back as much as I can and where I can. Like I said, I have 2 children. One has an IEP, one doesn't, so I'm experienced on both ends of that. I want to say forum, but and then also my career is obviously construction management, and with the schools being 90 years old, facility management, maintenance, construction projects, that's one of the main areas that I bring to the board if elected.
Very good. Thank you. And Leo, please give us your intro.
Thank you, John, also for having this exercise in democracy. And it's quite fitting that it takes place here in the CWV, the Catholic War Veterans. And I would like to personally thank the veterans in the room. I see Mr. Delabella, I know Sharma's a veteran. I saw Mike Emmerich here, and any other veteran in the room. Thank you for your service to the country. Because of folks like you, it allows us to hold exercises in democracy, as I like to call them, like this. The only thing missing, I guess people are home watching football or baseball. I would have hoped that a few more people might have come out. My name is Leo J. Smith, Jr. I've been a resident of Bayonne for all of my 66 plus years. I spent the last 44 years with the Bayonne Board of Education, doing every job manageable. I started as a bus driver, became a substitute teacher, classroom teacher, program director, vice principal, business administrator, and I wound up as an assistant superintendent of schools. I've seen every angle of this district. I don't think there's a candidate who has more institutional, educational, or the knowledge of what goes on in this district. And like Anthony said, what our buildings need. So 11D, Smith.
Very good. Trustee Ryan, please.
My name is Charles Ryan. I'm a current trustee. I'm running for re-election along with Dennis Wilbeck and Carol Cruden, who can't make it today. We are the trustees with experience. We have over 40 years' experience with Carol and Dennis within the district itself. Myself, I spent 31 years on the police department, including 7 years in charge of cops in schools. We are well acquainted with the problems of the district. We were people who took drastic action during the financial crisis to make sure that we didn't go bankrupt, and we helped us to move forward. We, as personally, I'm a special needs parent. I am a conflicted trustee. That point is now moved. We now have a new superintendent of schools for the next 3 years. We have a business administrator for the next 3 years. So now the term is for 3 years. So now I can vote on any matter that comes before the board. Again, the conflicts are moved. The conflicts, matter of fact, are good because my conflicts let me know what's going on in the district. We don't always get the whole story. Sometimes you need to talk to people inside to get the whole story.
Thank you, trustee. And let's continue.
My name is Lisa Burke. I am a lifelong resident of Bayonne. I live here with my husband and my 3 children, 2 of which have an IEP and have special services in our public schools. I chose to run for the Bayonne Board of Education because as a parent, I'm concerned about what's going on. I'm concerned for our children. I'm concerned as a taxpayer. I'm concerned for our teachers. And most importantly, I'm concerned about the quality of education each of our students are receiving. I am eager to roll up my sleeves and get to work with the newly elected board and start to move this district in the direction that it needs to go. We need to start change, and we need to have it now. I know that you said that you're no longer conflicted out, but it did stall us in many areas. We need to move forward without conflict, without delay, or without motive, because our children deserve it.
Very good. Thank you, Lisa. Please, let's continue.
My name is Melissa Matthews. I am a mom of 4 under the age of 8. I am fairly new to Bayonne. I moved here 5 years ago with my husband, and we chose to raise our family here. I currently work part-time in planning and zoning at the city. I have seen what is on the horizon, and the city is beginning a new chapter, and it's time to start over with our school system and begin a new chapter also as well with leadership. I have a community garden that I'm working on. 10,000 square feet is the original garden, and we're going to move it onto campuses next year. I also have a sign language program that I've started in the city. I'm doing this because I want to make this school system one that all of our children deserve, and I feel that we have a lot of room for growth, and I'm able to provide that.
All right. Jan?
Good evening. My name is Jan Egan. I am 12D. She's 13D. She's 14D. I should flip it around. I guess it's supposed to fit the other way. I am currently the vice president of operations for my family-owned mattress factory. We make beds over in Newark. We're keeping manufacturing in New Jersey. Instead of buying stuff from overseas, we try to buy everything American here because we want to invest in our community, and that's really why I'm running. If you look at my resume, and I'm not going to go through it because I got a minute, you'll see that since my youth, I have volunteered my time for my city. I've never lived outside of Bayonne except for the 4 years I was away at college. And I came back, and my wife and I are raising our family here. My oldest son stays in the bedroom that I had because we bought my parents' house. And that's the kind of family I want, kind of life I want. And that's why I'm running for Bayonne Board of Education. So that's all I have to say right now. It's fine.
Thank you, Jan. And let's wrap up the intros.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Glover Wilson. I'm 1D. I am a parent of 3, family from Bayonne. I work for the Hudson County Correctional Center. I am a social worker. I got into this campaign because I didn't like to see what our children are eating in school. I'm getting nervous that we're outsourcing our county money to other counties, and we need to start investing back into our city. We have new people coming to our city, that's fine, but we need to keep our kids here and teach them, and we have capable teachers that's working in our board, and I'm just tired of seeing the money go to other counties to teach other children stuff, and we can do it right here. I started Hunger Free Bayonne out of a back of a van, and now we have grown in 3 years, and we feed over 700 residents every Saturday morning. I ask my friends at this table, I know elections can get ugly, but do not bash Home and Free Bayonne. You can bash me personally, I really don't care. But when this election is over, those people still have to eat.
Thank
And
you,
that's
Stephanie.
all I ask.
Much appreciated. All right, so with that, Corey is going to lead us off with a question, and we're going to start with Stephanie.
So the average age of all the city schools is 93 years old. Only 4 schools were built after 1930. If elected, how do you plan on revamping the city schools?
Like I said, we'll start with Stephanie.
First of all, we'll find whatever city property that we own and bid the contract out to someone that is gonna be reliable. I would love for us to, all these big companies coming here is building all these condos. We should ask them to help us build. And we need more than 1 school. We need 2 more schools. If we're gonna be honest with each other. I don't know what's going on with Marist. I know they had said they thought Marist was gonna leave out and they were gonna make that a school for us, but I don't think that's gonna happen. But we have to start talking to these owners that's bringing these big companies in and asking to help us build this school. Because the taxpayer money is not gonna build these schools. How much more do you wanna tax us? And you really giving no taxes to these big companies that's coming in. So that would be my first thing.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. So Jan, go ahead, give us,
Same question?
yeah, the same question.
Well, so the first thing is, like Stephanie pointed out, we have to identify land. I know that land is going to be a premium in Bayonne,
Yes.
but certainly the city has parcels of land that they have in the past through various administrations have tried to sell to private concerns. They package some parcels. That's the city. It's not the Board of Ed. The Board of Ed and the city need to work together to find the land because the Board of Ed doesn't own that much property, and the city has some. The city also has the power of eminent domain, which people say is a bad word, but when you're talking about something that's inherently beneficial like a school, maybe it's not such a bad word, not such a curse word. The other thing is that we have schools that have land around them where I know schools in Jersey City have done it. Short-term classrooms in trailers, so you can start on one school, maybe and rehab, a smaller school or a school with some land, start rebuilding, rehabbing schools, and then essentially the first domino to fall.
Sorry, but that's not.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, so I basically agree with Jan here. I think the best way to do it would be to take a smaller school, move it into a temporary situation or location, wherever that be. You have to identify and work with the city also and the Board of Ed to figure out where you can do that. Then you expand, and if possible, in my opinion, we can build up. A lot of the schools in New York are taller. They have better facilities. They have, play areas on the roofs and everything like that. And then you move those kids back, and then you do the same, and you go through as you can. And that's, I think, one of the ways you can do it.
Okay, very good. Keep it moving.
I agree a little bit with both of them. We do have some facilities that we can utilize. There are a couple of different grammar schools, Catholic grammar schools that are not being used right now. Maybe partner with some of the businesses and help them develop some money that we do not have right now. Before we can start building, we have to have the money to build. You don't go and buy a house unless you have the money to purchase. We don't have that right now. We need to somehow get some funds into our budget. And maybe there are programs the state have that can match it up to 40%. We've never even entertained that area yet. We need to look at different areas. We also have the schoolyards. Maybe we could start building or have, like he had said, the temporary housing for the schools there until we can knock down and build up. But we can't do it all at once. We have to take time doing this, and we have to do it the right way.
Okay, got it. Trustee, what do you think?
First off, the superintendent is conducting a survey as we're going forward, since he just got here, as to what our needs are. He's also been in contact with City Hall. I was speaking to Mayor Davis this morning about acquiring land or setting aside land at the only 2 large open spaces that are available, the old Texaco property and the old Navy base. We have to start thinking those terms. We also have to obviously contact the state. Money is available at some levels to help fund our school systems. But at the end of the day, it's going to take a commitment by our citizens to go forward. These are 90-year-old buildings in some cases. They are outliving their lifespan. And at some point, we're all just going to have to bite the bullet, talk to the state, get what we can, see how we can work with the city to identify those sites that are proper and then we're just gonna have to build. We have no real choice in the matter anymore.
Thank you. And Mr. Smith, what do you think?
Yes, as far as money from the state, right now, the SDA, School Development Associate Authority, that has that money out, they're broke. There is no money at the state level right now, so if we're looking there, we're quite foolish. The place to go would be to build a super school down the base. The land is available, our buildings are 90 years old. When you renovate, you inherently run into problems. Problems with air exchangers, problems with heating systems, problems with the neighbors. In order to build a new school, it's a 3-year timeline. You have to get land approval, you have to get surveys done, you have to get architectural studies, you have to put bond counsel in place, you have to procure materials. It's a lengthy process. If you were to walk into some of our elementary schools, the older ones, you would be appalled at what is in those schools, and we're sending our children there. My idea would be to combine some schools and put them in various locations down the base. The land is plentiful, it's there, it's not being utilized. We don't need another Costco down there. We should put a school down there.
Thank you. Anthony?
First, as much as the trailer sounds like a great option, that's what we had in my high school down in Florida, and it was a nightmare. First, one trailer is one classroom, so to do that with a grammar school, it's not feasible. Second, one of the ideas that I put up on my page was converted Midtown into a middle school, which would alleviate 3 classes per grade for 6th, 7th, and 8th from every single elementary school in the city. Since Midtown next to Oresco is the newest school, it's not as hard and as complicated to retrofit it for the older kids. So that'll alleviate the overcrowding in the elementary schools that we have, which will allow us to take a section and renovate slowly. Remember, you can't just take a 100-year-old building and upgrade the electric. You can't just add classrooms. You can't just tear a building down and build new ones. So Midtown, to me, would be the ideal to alleviate the issue right now. And like Leo said, it is a 3-year, sometimes even a 5-year process to build a new building with all the surveys and everything. And then also figuring out transportation. If you build it on the base, you're having a school over there, but the city and everybody says there's no kids coming. So
Gotcha. That's fine. All right.
So regarding revamping our schools, I think the first thing we need to look at is really the community outreach and the stakeholders that we have in this community, how we bring that together. Our neighbors, like we said earlier, have done it where developers have invested into community gardens, into new schools, and have supported that. We talk about pilots and so forth, but school in lieu of taxes as well. I think our taxpayer base is getting taken from to an extent, and I think developers should give a little bit back. It would be nothing for a benefit. High quality schools will attract those people to fill those vacant apartments. And just regarding the middle school, it's actually not half bad idea. You don't know why? You open up spaces in other schools, and thank you, I've heard Trustee Munoz talk about this in previous sessions, where we can expand on that, make some space in schools, bring services to each school, get children ready for the next one. While we're looking at developing these new schools, it costs money. There have been districts as well who have tapped into nonprofit foundations, such as the Rockefeller Foundation, to support bonds and match that money to build some of our new schools. So we need to work on those relationships.
Excellent. Okay. Ms. Sharma?
I don't think I'm going to say anything that anybody else didn't say in one way or the other down this line for this issue, but I have talked about in the past, that middle school concept. So K through 6, 7, 8, 9, and then the high school is an ideal solution to some of our issues with overcrowding in the current schools. It doesn't solve the problem of overcrowding in the town in general. As we continue to build out all of these apartments, we are going to have kids that come into the schools, and we are going to have to deal with building a new school. There's a myriad of ways to get the money to do that. We're going to have to bond. We're going to have to go to the state. We're going to have to do a lot of different things to make it so we can build a school. But we are going to have to face that, and we're going to have to start doing that right now. It can't wait till 3 years from now to start. It has to start now.
Thank you. All right. Well, that was downright civil. But is there any rebuttal on any?
The only rebuttal I have is that all the options are on the table, but the process has started. It started with our new superintendent starting his survey and reaching out. Beyond that, what I said is it still comes down to us. We're the ones who have to say we want a school. We're the ones who have to say we're willing to try to get money from the state or wherever, but we're going to have to be willing to bond and tax ourselves. Our grandparents did it. It's time for us to step up. Like Mr. Smith said, those buildings are, some of them are almost 90 years old. You can only get so much out of them.
Thank you, trustee. Please.
We have been talking about building new schools for quite a few years, at least going on 3 at this point. My question is, the process clearly wasn't started as we all would have wanted it to. And I hope going forward, we can take a look at that and get this started, but I still don't hear that we have already done this and we're still talking about doing it. So I think we should become more proactive than we are reactive to our situation.
Thank you. Leo?
Yeah, part of the long-range facility plan that the school system is required to do 3 years ago, all of this was put in place. It was put in place 3 years ago, what it would cost, where it could be done, and then we got an interim superintendent who basically for 2 years sat on his hands and didn't follow through with it.
So the
So
interim-
it should have been started 3 years ago, and it just wasn't. It went on deaf ears.
So you're
That's,
saying.
hang on one second. Jan was
Well,
first.
First of all, I mean, this is nothing new. 3 years ago, 10 years ago, we knew this was gonna be a problem.
Right.
Now, fine, started under the previous administration, whatever, but this is nothing new. I mean, people are talking about their experience on the board or at the board, and we know that there are people that had the power to start this and it didn't start. Second of all, the middle school sounds like a great idea, but I'd like to understand why it's just not shuffling kids from one school to the next. If you have 10 kids and you move 5 to one school, you still have 10 kids. So I'm not sure that a middle school is the end all and be all to this problem. I think it's a little more complex.
Charlotte?
So I guess the thing is, and Leo, you may be right that it was started several years ago, but at the end of the day, I mean, if it was started several years ago, how come we don't have anything tangible right now? And
I said it should have been started
Okay.
3 years
I
ago.
think
It was
it's
part of the long-range
All right,
really
let's not call
unfair.
that. Let's not call that.
I do think it's very unfair. Dr. Wonko is not here. He was hand-selected by the board that is sitting now for the most part, except for a couple of people that were brought to the board last year. It's really interesting to say that Dr. Wonko is the
That's
reason
not-
we haven't moved forward on that.
Anthony?
Just going back to saying that the middle school idea obviously wouldn't work, but when you look at, we have 12 elementary schools, so you're looking at almost 33 different classes per grade. That's now alleviated from the oldest buildings in the district. Nobody said it was a permanent solution, but it's the only possible solution to immediately make an impact in the overcrowding in the schools. So nobody said that it's a permanent solution, all right? It's something that'll get us out of the overcrowding that we have. Yes, it is shuffling some kids, but it's also given those 6th, 7th, and 8th graders an experience of being in the school without being with preschoolers,
That's fine.
without being with kindergartners.
Yes.
So if you do have a middle school, then you're going to be busing people from all over the city to get to this one middle school, whereas they could be going to their local school and walking there. And so it's going to either put pressure on the parents to get their kids to school or the bus system, which we're already having a problem with. So I'm not sure that's actually really a viable solution.
All right, we're gonna move on. Obviously, we could talk about this one for a long time, and we did. So we're gonna stay on the topic of, You'll hear in a second. So Corey, please, the next one. We'll start with Charlotte this time.
Yeah, let's keep the discussion about middle schools going. So some of the suggestions that the city should, instead of having community center schools, have 2 middle schools, one uptown and one downtown. Those would serve students in grades 6 through 8. Do you support this? And if so, what do you think the benefit of having a middle school would be? Or would you prefer to keep the community-based system?
So, I guess my answer to that is I like both types of, both layouts in that space. I personally grew up in the Midwest, and I went from kindergarten to 6th grade, and then I went into a 7th and 8th grade school, middle school, and then I went into the high school, 9th through 12th. The advantage to that is, and I think a lot of parents probably feel the same way I do, you think all these kids look so big the day they go to school, but there is a huge difference between your kindergartner going to school and your 6th grader or your 7th grader. When they get into 7th and 8th grade, they're bigger kids. They have different perspectives and different things going on. And I think that as a mom, there is an advantage to having, that K through 6, the smaller kids together. And then the 7th and 8th graders, they grow and they have different perspectives, and you could have teachers that are focused on them, not just generalists, but
That's fine.
people who are focused on those kids. And I think that's an advantage.
Thank you. Melissa?
So I feel, I'm on both ends of the middle school situation. One, I think if I was elected as a Board of Education trustee, why don't we take a community survey? Who better to ask that question to than our taxpayers and our students and our parents and our teachers that are here every day, who would be impacted by the transportation, who would be impacted by the teachers, where they go, where your child goes. Let's ask them first. Because honestly, if we're elected, those are the people we're answering to at the end of the day. Supporting middle schools, quite honestly, could alleviate some space temporarily while we're building these new schools, while we're getting these bonds and approvals and building this community relationship up with developers. So I'm on the fence. I would love to hear what the community would have to say, because I would like to support the community in the positive direction for every student in the city.
Thank you, Melissa. Anthony, your take?
The benefits with middle school, I grew up out on Long Island and down in Fort Lauderdale, finishing up my high school down there. We had K through 5, 6 through 8 in middle school. But it allowed the kids in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they're getting ready to go to high school. They're gonna have to find their own way to the high school, which is the same distance as Midtown. So if you're worried about transportation, you gotta figure that out when they're in 9th grade, which is only a year older than 8th grade. All right, I got bused to elementary school. I didn't get bused to junior high. I walked 2.5 miles to my junior high as a 6th grader. Yes, the world is a little bit different, but adaptation is gonna have some pains. But the fact that you can separate those preschoolers and the 8th graders, that's a huge gap, like Shawna was saying. But now you take these kids out of an elementary school setting, they can be put into a more rigorous setting with teachers focused on the middle school level, the 7th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, prepping them for high school, which in turn allow the high school teachers to get a 9th grader that these kids are going to come in more mature because they're in their own school. They're not with kids. They're with their peers.
Thank you. Leo?
Yes, I would support 2 middle schools, like, as you said, one uptown, one downtown. The state law requires that you bus when the walking distance is more than 2 miles for the students. So what we could do is put one centrally located, probably where Bailey School is. That's a very old building in very much need of repair, and then hopefully find a parcel in the uptown area and split those 900 students. It would be approximately 900 students per grade level. You'd have to build buildings for 900 students. Right now, I don't believe that Midtown would be able to handle that. When that building was built, it was built for approximately 1,100 students, and they're probably at or above that right now. But I would support 2 middle schools to alleviate the problem of busing children all over town.
Thank you. Trustee?
I'd be open to middle schools, but on the same token, there are serious problems with them. First is logistics. Where are you going to get the land to put the 2 middle schools? That's number one. Number two, from the parent's point of view, if many families have 3 children, if you have them spaced 2 years apart, that's over 6 years. So you could conceivably, and you would have a parent with a child in 3 different schools at the same time. That's a hardship on the parents right off the bat logistically. Third, my wife, who's an assistant principal, been teaching or an assistant principal for 40 years, points out that the benefit of a K-8 school is that the 8th graders and 7th graders and 6th graders get tasked with setting an example for the younger grades. You lose that dynamic. It makes them, in turn, a little more difficult to keep on track because they feel they're a little more important. They've graduated. So they feel like they have more independence than they're really ready for. So you're losing a lot if you go to a middle school model. We've had this work K-8 forever. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
All right, perfect.
I think most parents in this town are comfortable with K-8 because that's what we've all grown up with. We're used to this. The problem with having middle schools, specifically one middle school, is going to be transportation. You cannot have young children that are walking their kindergarten class, their kindergarten age brother or sister, all the way across town. It's just not, they're not able to do it. Having 2 middle schools is also a very good option, but it cannot be done unless we are actually having open communication with the city and with the developers to help us. We need to have the funding. There's going to be funding for busing and for building, for teachers. for everything, for putting the chairs in the schools. We need to start having open communication, which is something we have not done yet.
All right, very good.
I personally grew up with community school model, and I see value in that. I really look fondly upon that, having the younger kids in my school. And I think it's important for my kids as they get older to be around younger students. It builds empathy. We would go into the younger kids' classes and help out and stuff. So I think that's important. I would be open to the idea of 2 middle schools because that would put less stress on the bus systems. But I prefer the K through 8 model, but I'm open to the other one as well.
Okay, thank you. Jan?
The only benefit I would see for middle schools right now is you can begin construction on them without disrupting the current grammar schools. And if we can identify 2 parcels of land, and if we identify the funding, and that would lead to the least amount of disruption for our students, that's where I see the benefit. Beyond that, I believe that the K through 8 model, like a number of people talk about, the younger children modeling the behavior of the older children, responsibility, but frankly, my youngest used to get walked, my oldest used to walk my youngest home. It made my life easier because I get to stay at work. I didn't have to leave work early. And I'm sure there's 100 parents, thousands of parents, I should say, they're in the same situation. So currently, it's working. But given the logistics of building new schools and that aspect, I'd be open to exploring it. But find me the property, then we'll talk.
All right, and Stephanie?
I'm on the fence with both. I think both are good ideas, but like everyone's saying, we have to have the funding, the land, and the technology to make sure we can do this smoothly. There's nothing wrong, especially now since peer pressure is getting so bad in some of the schools, to maybe to separate the 6th to the 8th grade so they can learn how to deal with each other when it's time to go to high school. It could be a good, it could be a bad. Also, I do want to apologize because I had a prior engagement. I'm speaking at a domestic violence award ceremony tonight, so I have to go. But if anybody has any questions, you have my phone number, you can call me. I can come sit with you. We can have coffee, tea, pizza, whatever you want to do, and we can have a conversation. You want to come down to Hunger Free Bayonne and have a conversation with me, you're more than welcome. But I do apologize. I do have to go.
All right, thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you very much for inviting me, y'all.
Nice going,
And thank you for understanding.
Keep up the good work.
All right, thank you. Glad you could make it. Now, any rebuttal? Everybody seems good on this one, okay? So I'm going to ask one this time, and we're going to start with Melissa. So after years of financial uncertainty, many seem to believe that the district's now in a position of stability. So if elected, how would you maintain that financial stability? Or if you don't think we're there, how do you think we would get there in the shortest time possible?
So I think stability is a flexible word. I think that comes with some perception. Are we flexible when we think about, are we surplus? What are we doing with that surplus? What do we want to do with it? Are we stable when we think about our teachers and their contracts? Are we thinking ahead? Are we looking forward to those costs? Are we looking forward to the financial costs of potentially building the schools? If we are financially stable, I haven't personally seen those papers recently. I think that comes down to accountability and transparency across the board. We need people going line by line, no just signing off. We need to question more things. And I think we need to answer more to our communities and have more of that open discussion, because we might discover there might be better solutions out there. And I think that's how people work together to focus really on what matters most to this community, ultimately.
Very good. Anthony?
Oh, I mean, when we say that we're stable, I mean, it really depends on how you look at it. I mean, 80% of our budget is the faculty and staff. So how stable are you when I'm at every single board meeting, for the most part, which I think only one other person could say at this table. I haven't seen anybody at a board meeting. So, I see the teachers leaving. They're leaving for other districts. We're one of the most underpaid districts in the state. We can't keep teachers here, and that's a problem. So I don't see us as being financially stable. And Mr. Smith can attest to you, when the whole 287 teachers, which is a part of the experience that's being boasted, I sat with him and the previous accountant and went to the line for almost 2 years of the budget. I can do that as a trustee. That should be a routine type of thing. I know everybody wants to say that they're there for one meeting a month or whatever. I did it as a parent on my own, and I sat with Mr. Smith for almost 3 hours going over the budget, line item for line item, flagging stuff. Stuff that was missed by the board with their experience, and even missed by the state that got pushed through. It can be done.
Thanks, Anthony.
Okay, thank you. Right now, the budget for the Board of Education, anybody know what the budget is? Anybody up here? $136 million plus right now is the board. About 52% of that comes from the taxpayers of the city of Bayonne. So do we go after the taxpayers of the city of Bayonne, the homeowners, and ask them again? The state needs to do more for the city of Bayonne. We have to get on those elected state officials and ask them to bring the funds in. Other districts, Union City, a comparable district, their budget is almost double what ours is. They have a few more students, but they get a lot more money from the state, ladies and gentlemen. That's the route that we have to go. The state also has to assume a fair share of the special education budget. The special education budget last year was about $34 million. The state contributed $9 million. The rest is coming from the taxpayers of the city of Bayonne. So we need to work with our elected officials at the state level and get them on board as to what the needs are. And, okay, I'll come back to it. Can I rebut myself?
I don't think you'll have to, but let's see what happens. Trustee?
All right, we're stable. Our last two CAFR reports, which is what we report to the state, indicates that we're stable. We did not run deficit these years, so we are stable. To Mr. Smith's point, he's right. The state doesn't fund what we need, what it should be funding. We are an underfunded district. We've been for over 10 years. We can only hope that our elected officials down in Trenton will bring up more money that would help stabilize the tax rate and help us to do more of what we need. Additionally, it's not just the state, it's the federal government. The special ed budget, $34 million, that's great. But remember, the federal law, Individual Disabilities Education Act idea, has only been funded, it's now down to 30% funded. So, I mean, if you just think about that, $34 million, if we doubled that, think of how the pressure would come off this. And that would just go right to those kids. So it's not just the city, it's not just the city taxpayers' contribution, it's our state and our federal government. We need more help. We deserve more help. Our kids deserve more help. That said, it's stable for now, as long as we keep up with it.
Go ahead.
Well, you may say it's stable, but none of us know that it's stable because there is no transparency with it. We are the only city that says we are going to have a budget meeting on the 1st of December at 4 o'clock, and guess what? We're passing that budget by 7 o'clock. The town, the people in this town need a little bit more. We need a little bit more transparency with everything that's going on as we're rolling out the budget. That shouldn't be done in one day. That should be done over a course of 2 to 3, maybe even 4 meetings. And we currently don't have that happening. So I trust in what you're saying, but as a community, we all have no idea even how to read that budget. Have you ever tried? I've been the executive director of a non-for-profit group for 17 years. And I sat there and looked at that budget and scratched my head for about 5 hours the other day. It's not user-friendly to the community to actually go on, look at it, and have a general idea as to what's going on with our money.
Thank you. I told you probably wouldn't have to rebut yourself. But let's proceed.
Okay, so I mean, a lot of the stuff I agree with that's being said. We need more state money, we need more federal money. We also need to be linking up with companies and nonprofits, get a grant writer in here. Our kids need better programs. So maybe we're stable right now, but we can do a lot better for our kids and for their education. I feel like there are so many people out there that would be willing to help us if we actually reach out to them. And that's not something the board needs. That's not something the board has really been doing. They're down in the weeds and they need to be out there advocating and finding people to bring money into the system also.
Okay. Yeah.
So $65 million more last year, the state gave us. This year, the governor's address calls for about just under 10% raise in funding. So, I mean, the money's coming from the state. Is it coming fast and furious? No. Should we get more? Yeah. You can certainly trace it back to our decision, so long ago not to be an Abbott district. I think that certainly hurt us. But like my running mates spoke of, the Board of Education, the Board of Trustees, should not be in the weeds. They should be out there looking for other opportunities. We should be ambassadors for the board, for our Board of Education, for our teachers, parents, and children. And we talk about the state money. Well, who's down there advocating at state for us? Are we going down to the League of Municipalities and having drinks and going to cocktail parties? Or are we actually doing something? Are we out there looking at corporations to try and get corporations to invest in town. I haven't heard about it. Hell, if that was happening, I would think that we'd be crowing about it.
So, I guess we're stable if you want to maintain the status quo. So at the end of the day, if you are getting exactly what you like from the Bayonne Board of Ed and the Bayonne School District, then I guess the budget is stable. At the end of the day, as a parent, I have to say, am I getting what I'd like to get out of the district? This is my money. I'm a taxpayer. These are my kids. These are your kids, right? So the budget is balanced and the expenditures that we have are being covered by what they have currently budgeted. And that is by law something they have to do. And you could say, we balance the budget, so everything's stable. We don't have a deficit anymore, the magical deficit that came and went. That doesn't exist anymore. But that doesn't mean the district is stable and that we as taxpayers are getting our money's worth. And I think that's the conversation we need to have. Are you getting technology? Are you getting the things you want?
Yes, Leo.
First of all, the city has to do away with these pilots, payment in lieu of taxes. We would be getting, the board is not getting their fair share with all this development that's going on in town. They did pass a law about an amendment to the city bylaws about 2 years ago to give us 10%. I don't know if we've ever received anything from the city with all the development, and everybody sees what's going on. It's beautiful. Development is great, but these people need to pay their fair share of taxes. Point two. Okay.
Just to go to Jan's point about going and fighting, I guess I'm just a little confused because I thought we all understood what a board trustee position is. The superintendent is the one, and the business administrator is the one that goes and fights for funding. The board trustee is the one that's there to hold the superintendent accountable. It's not the board's position to go down and fight for the funding. Should they have a say? Absolutely. That's why we hire a superintendent. That's why we hire a business administrator. The board of trustee is not as powerful as a lot of people at this table apparently think that it is. So, understand.
There's a couple of different discussions going on here. The first is stability. It's stable. It's not in deficit. So that's stability. You cannot argue that. There's multiple tests for that. That's fine. The other thing is transparency. Those budgets are always going to be difficult to read, especially without training. We can push very hard to have that, and we can try to do that. But at some point, we're going to run into a wall. It's technical. Also, getting it out in advance, I'd love to see that. I've been arguing for that on multiple fronts, that things should be out to the public earlier, but that's going to take some time.
If the board's sole purpose is to hire a superintendent, then what the hell are we doing here tonight? I mean, the board has no job once they hire a superintendent. They wash their hands of it, they rubber stamp the budget when it comes up. That is a statement of somebody who does not want to fight for our children, and I'm sorry. So yeah, maybe there's no real power, but when you have the microphone, when you're in front of that room, you can use the bully pulpit. I'll steal a phrase from my political science days in college. You can use the bully pulpit of the Board of Education and go out there and fight for the children, for the teachers.
So I went to a board meeting recently, and I have been consecutively for over 2 years, close to 3 years now. I have heard and seen and have fought myself in front of trustees and questioned many things regarding budget, regarding costs. The one thing I heard was that they weren't day-to-day people. So yes, it is somewhat of our job to fight. It is somewhat of our job to influence. The biggest thing here that I'm hearing is communication again. Having a community engagement committee where people from the public can come out and ask those questions comfortably without feeling like they don't know, I think is a big step in the right direction to really define what stability in our district means.
Yes.
I mean, I thought I said it clearly when I said that it's not the board's job to fight. The superintendent and VA is. Don't ever mistake. I fight for my kids. I go to the board meetings and I speak. And there's only one other person at this table that can say that they've gone just as much and fought. And about speaking to the budget and actually reading it and going through it, I did it 2 years worth of budgets. I sat with Leo and Matt and went over it line for line. Guess what? They were more than willing to answer any questions I had with the budget. And I told you, 3 hours going through it. Now, I have experience with budgets and construction with multi-million-dollar projects. But at the same time, that's why they're here.
All right,
Yeah,
go on.
as
Wait,
far
so-
as fighting
how many votes
for,
we get?
as far as fighting and going down to Trenton, Dr. McGee and myself met many times with the Commissioner of Education. We spoke before the Senate Finance Committee, Senator Sweeney's committee, about the lack of funding that Bayonne was receiving. It was a 7-year battle. Finally, this year, Bayonne did get a little more money, but a lot of that is being gobbled up by the new preschool initiative, where you'll see a bigger chunk of money in the state share, but that's being gobbled up by preschool. And I may fight with you, but I will definitely fight for you.
Well, first of all, if I'm not mistaken, those are two separate, the funding for the preschool is actually over and above the other 25 million that we got.
That was in
Right.
addition.
But nobody's suggesting that the board has some sort of power to go down and beat the governor over the head. What I'm suggesting, and something that I did when I was a member of the board of trustees for the Bayonne Community Mental Health Center, was we advocated being ambassadors for our organization. And that's what the Board of Ed needs to be. The trustees need to be ambassadors for the children, ambassadors for teachers, ambassadors for taxpayers.
All right, so I didn't say it at the beginning, but I'll say from this point forward, let's try to keep it to one rebuttal per person, but I think we gave everyone a fair say on that one. So we're gonna move on, but we're gonna keep it related, so I think the conversation will remain pretty robust. So, and this time we're going to start with Jan. What is your opinion on the city's use of tax abatements? Should the city allocate more of its pilot revenue to the schools? And if so, what percentage of funds on new development should be directed to the school system?
Well, so let's get stuff straight with pilots. Payment of no taxes. So there were no taxes on these properties last year. So any money that's coming to the Board of Education is more than we got last year. So let's get that out of the way. Most of these projects were empty lots that are being taxed at a higher rate. So we're getting money we never got. I say we, I mean the Board of Education. Okay. Should the Board of Ed get more money? The easier answer is yeah, of course. The real question is how did the economics work out? Because for so many years there was no development in town. These parcels lay fallow and we got no money out of them. They were not making money for the city, the county, or the Board of Ed. So I think you got to look at it a case-by-case basis exactly what it is. Would I be in favor of lobbying the city for a higher percentage of the pilot? Of course, yes. 20, 30, 40%. I mean, the sky's the limit. Right now we're at about 10. I think there's probably some room to work with. But again,
Yeah, I agree with
Well,
Jan.
actually, we're gonna go
Oh.
around.
So I'm going to say yes, we should get more money of the pilots. I do believe that a strong school system benefits the taxpayer more than anything else. You know, when you go to buy a house, you look at, what is the school district? That is one of the very first things you look at. So when you're looking at growing this community, even the people, the developers are looking to put thousands of people in those apartment buildings they're building. So at the end of the day, the school system is a big factor in whether or not you come here. So yeah, the developers are going to benefit from building the buildings. They're going to benefit from, make that revenue. The city's going to get some of that revenue. And yeah, the school should get a nice hefty chunk of it, more than we are getting. And yes, we are getting 10% now from the pilots. Should it be 20, 30%? Absolutely it should. We have real issues. We have to build new schools because those buildings are coming in. The developers are benefiting from that. We need to benefit from it as well on the school side.
So I think we all can agree that we all want more money for the schools. I think, of course, we should all be getting more. But if that's not happening right now, I think we need to think about the solution for now and not keep hoping and wanting what we want. High quality schools, I do agree with Sharma, high quality schools will attract those people to come in and invest into our communities. But when I really think about a community engagement plan and part of the contract of these tax abatements, I don't know the ins and outs of that. I'm not going to pretend like I do. What I will say is that we need people on both sides in city council meetings and Board of Education meetings, meeting in the middle and saying, what can I do for you and what can you do for me? That's the real meaning of a team. And in this community, the Board of Ed and the city should be a team. I think there's a huge bridge, a huge gap that needs to be filled. And I think sitting down with some of these developers and saying, hey, so what are you going to give back to our community because we're giving this to you? I think that's okay to hold their feet to that fire.
Okay. Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the standard formula, I believe, is 40, 40, 20. So right off the bat, we're only getting 10 right now. Mind you, this was just 2 years ago that it got increased. Before that, there was nothing. So this is all geared towards filling the city's structural deficit, which it has to be filled. So I understand it. The problem that I have with the pilots is the terms. They're 30 years. Mind you, the developers can come in and sell the building with the 20 years left, so that next guy gets 20 years of pilots. And the next guy, 10 years later, buys it. That's another one. That stuff, we don't reap the benefits really until that abatement is done and the higher tax rate is on those. That's the problem that I have with those. If you look at Woodbridge, I believe they're getting about 25% on each pilot, which still isn't the same as a 40%, which is what we would normally get. But we have to look at our city as well, and our city is in a hole. So that's why working together with the city, it's great, but at the same time, they have their own hole. That if we work together, we automatically get sucked into it. So we have to work together to a degree, but these pilots gotta be controlled.
The developers, when they come in, they feed the city and the populace with the notion that these high-rises are not going to produce school-age children. We're only building one-bedroom and studio apartments, they will tell you, and there'll be no children there. What they fail to tell you is the backside. Someone like myself who has a 3-bedroom home, maybe I buy a 1-bedroom in one of those high-rise, who comes into my home? A family with 3 or 4 children. The city's own master plan by 2024 calls for approximately 424 new school-age children to be living in Bayonne. That in itself is half a school building. Now, naturally, they all won't be in one building, but we're going to have to address it. It's not fair. It should never happen. We need to get as much as we can from these developers. The land is there. They're not making any more land. The land is valuable. It's at peak. Interest rates are low. They can well afford it.
Very good. Trustee?
According to a class that I went to with school boards this past fall, the way the system works is that the school board develops a budget, passes it, sends it to the city, who then pays it. The problem is that he was directly addressing pilots. The problem with pilots is that it doesn't affect that process until it gets to the point where the city can't take in enough money to pay its bills. Then the city essentially says, I can't afford to give you that money. And now all of a sudden you have a problem. You're in a deficit because the city doesn't pay its bills. And as he said, the courts aren't going to enforce the city to pay the school's budget. That's your big problem. Going forward is what are these pilots doing to the city's budget and its ability to support the school budget? When they say that they're going to give 10% or 15%, they have to give you that. That's a shell game. That's all that is. They have to pay the bill until they can't pay the bill, until they run a deficit that they can't cover over. Then that's the real problem going forward.
Thank you.
The problem with the pilot, with the buildings that are going up and the pilot program is that we essentially have 2 powerhouses. One is down on 27th and Avenue A, one is on 27th and Avenue C. And we stopped communicating with each other. Yes, we are getting 10%. Would each of us on this dais like to get 20, 30%? Yes, we would. So would all the taxpayers. But we need to have open communications. We stopped doing that for some reason a long time ago. There are really no significant plans moving forward. We need to make sure that anybody coming in will be having a higher rate than 10%. We are starting to get the money in. It was money that we did not have prior to anybody building there. It does need to increase, absolutely.
I think that we can all agree that we need more money and we probably need more money from these pilots. You're really gonna need somebody in there that gets along with City Hall. You're gonna need somebody that can communicate with them. Given that I'm in planning and zoning and I meet the developers when they come in for technical reviews and stuff, I'm sort of in a great position to be that person to liaise. And my teammates also get along great. So I think that we really understand. I mean, we all want the same thing. Everybody does. It's really a matter of who can actually accomplish that.
Okay, so a quick follow-up on my end, and we're gonna go around the same way we just did, but I just want a one-word answer from everyone. If elected in November, what do you think is a realistic number, percentage that the pilots should get allocated to the schools? So, Jan?
12%.
Okay. Trevor?
Probably 20%.
Okay.
I agree with the 20%, it's double.
I go back to the Woodbridge and say 25 to start.
20% is half of the 40 that we should be getting.
We should get the full 40% because it's a shell game.
All right.
20%.
I mean, 20%, but it's case by case, really.
Okay, good enough. So Corey is going to switch topics a little bit, and this time we will start with Anthony.
So, do you think a Board of Education trustee should be able to hold office if they have conflict of interest, meaning they have relatives working in the district?
I want to say no, just because obviously being non-conflicted, I feel that that's a big thing. But at the same time, it depends on the board setup as is. Because what we saw play this year was politics. And Trustee Ryan was brought back as a conflicted member. And what happened? Trustee Alonso decided to play games. Our superintendent hire was delayed because of Trustee Alonso. Our BA hire, which the man came with his family, was delayed. Granted, I was told it was a miscommunication, but was delayed for an hour because Trustee Alonso was put in that position because our board leadership, for President Broderick, Vice President Wilbeck, who apparently is not here, played politics with my child's future. Not good. So if it meant that that doesn't happen anymore, then I'd say, yeah, conflicted members shouldn't be allowed on the board.
I think the conflicted, non-conflicted doctrine of necessity routine is all being overplayed. Everybody up here is a good person. All right? Everybody up here is running for the right reasons. They want to better the system. They want the best for their children, their grandchildren, the kids in their neighborhood. Whether you're conflicted or not, you're going to make the right decision based on what you feel. And what they feel and what I feel is to give back to the kids of Bayonne. Remember, every decision that we make at any level, it filters down to those students in the classroom. And I don't think there's a person up here who has malice in their heart, whether they're conflicted or not. So I don't think the conflicted has anything to do with it.
Okay. Mr. Hyde?
Again, being conflicted is a non-issue now. The two big issues, superintendent and business administrator, they're decided for the 3-year term. It's just not a factor. What you bring to the table is you can get to sources within the district that you wouldn't, that a non-conflicted member can't get. You talk to people. Your conflicts, my wife talks to other people. You get information. And you can forward that to the superintendent or anybody. This is what's actually going on. Once you start climbing a ladder in any organization, you start to get filtered truths. You cannot get away from that. They teach you that in police school. They teach you that in management classes across the country. You're going to get filtered information. This is your access to unfiltered information. That's what a conflicted member brings to the board, and that's extremely important.
Thank you.
I have a yes and no on this because by law, each one of us in this community have a right to run for office, be elected to office, and sit on a board, whether we're conflicted or we're not conflicted. However, I do feel that you should not sit on a board if you are conflicted. It delays the process of just operating your board in a timely manner. We had many delays because of conflicts. I feel you shouldn't be.
All right.
I completely agree with Lisa. By law, yes, absolutely, you should be able to run. That is what the law is. That's what we should go by. I also agree that if you are conflicted, you should probably step aside. I don't think being conflicted is the only way to get information. You still can talk to people and find things out. It does not block communication not being conflicted. It's not like I don't know anybody. I can speak to people also. So I think that, no, you should step aside.
All right.
I think the idea that being conflicted is a benefit is a mistake. I think that's just, I can't agree with you on that. However, I do believe that you should be allowed to run if you're conflicted, and the voters should choose. I personally think that being conflicted is a problem, but again, that's why we have an election, that's why we have a campaign, and the voters can choose who they want to represent them. What happened recently was unfortunate because we had so many conflicted people. Why, how, who? I'm not going to make that decision. The voters spoke, the voters picked them. But I wouldn't vote for somebody who's conflicted, and I don't think that it's a good thing. But the law says they can sit, so they should sit.
Okay. John?
I agree that the law says that if you're conflicted, as long as you declare what those conflicts are, you could serve on the board. That is the way it reads, and that is the way that we should move forward. However, when you have several members of the board that are conflicted for one reason or another, you end up with a board that is elected that is paralyzed, that can't do what you need them to do. And I think we saw that, and that's a problem. I think that, you have to look at how people are connected, not just conflicts, but how they're connected and what you're getting. Are you getting more of the same from different places? And how does that come together to serve the community? I am a taxpayer. I want people that can go represent what I want. I want board members who can make decisions based on what I'm asking them to do as a taxpayer. And I think if you're conflicted, you can't do that as well.
Okay, and Melissa.
So I'll never knock an individual for running for the Bayonne Board of Education, conflicted or not. I think, it's an unintended consequence of a good problem. We raise our students, we raise our teachers here. They have teachers, they have families. It's something proud. I mean, we're the biggest employer in the city of Bayonne. People are going to be conflicted. I think the problem comes in is that when we make decisions to bring back conflicted board members to make a big decision that they can't even make a decision on, I think we need to stop paralyzing the board. We cannot give one person that much control over our children, over our teachers, over our staff, and over our taxes. That to me is just, it's mind-blowing. And I think that there needs to be balance. I think, yes, conflict can be a good thing. You do get that inside information. But like some of the other candidates said, when, as trustees, when you build those real relationships with your staff and your community and your kids, they're going to talk to you whether you're in the system or have a family member or not.
Okay. I think you have a rebuttal, trustee?
The only rebut I have is, again, it's not an issue now. It's a non-issue. The superintendent's there for 3 years, same as this term. The business administrator's there for 3 years, the same as this term. It's just not an issue.
It's not an issue until it's an issue, though.
But it's, unless you're wishing it death.
Well, wait,
No,
He's there for 3 years. I need more years.
We run into the
Well, that's
problem
another
again.
question.
I want a rebuttal there.
Let's see the Democrats still after that.
Listen,
You can
do I get a rebuttal?
You do, but they were first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So the one thing that I have is the superintendent and the BAs. The BA probably not, because I don't believe he's full-time yet, so I don't believe he
No, he's
started,
there.
or he just started. I know they were finding the replacement.
He's there.
Our term is for 3 years, and it starts in January. Superintendent started this school year, which means his renewal will come up in our term, which means that conflicted rears its ugly head at that renewal, which, as a conflicted member, if we have the same setup up there now, we will not be able to do the right thing. We'll be held hostage again if it stays the same. And the point, though, and Jan mentioned, let the voters decide. The leadership didn't let the voters decide. They picked to put us into this situation.
I think that, it is a 3-year term. It's not until 3 years. But here we go, being reactive versus proactive. These conversations should be happening now. These contracts regarding our teachers should be happening now. Future BAs, future superintendent, and future plans. I think you're being conflicted now. For the moment, it's okay. But when it does become a problem, it's a real problem.
All right, and Jan?
Well, with all due respect, trustee, if there's no problem, what are we doing up here? Does it mean no more votes for the next 3 years? There's nothing to decide for the next 3 years? There's no business for the board? The board has business going on, let's say every month. I imagine that there better be committee meetings and subcommittee meetings. So your conflicted situation never changes. That you're still the relative of someone that's on the board, that works for the Board of Education. And there's still important decisions to be made for our children. Again, you heard my opinion, but the voters decide, that's for them to decide. If you get elected, great.
If a majority of the board, though, is conflicted, then the doctrine of necessity kicks in, which allows all the board members to vote. So there is a mechanism there when you do get a majority of the people being conflicted.
Yes, but when you have to use the doctrine of necessity for several years running, you get a community that has a perception that the board is not operating independent of their conflicts.
Okay, but
And that becomes a real problem. I think that, the integrity of the board is extremely important. And I'm not talking about personal integrity. I'm talking about just the general structure and the integrity of the board. You need the community to feel like they can trust the board and that the board has their best interest at stake, not something else.
All right, well, we're going to move on, Leo, but we'll come back to this. So we're going to start with Ms. Matthews, and we're going to leave this just a little more open-ended. So what do you think is the most pressing issue in the school district that is not being addressed by the board at all and needs to be addressed better?
I think probably the most important thing right now is the population growth and where we're going to place the kids and the age of the schools. So we need to have a concrete, solid plan of what we're going to do going forward, because the city is changing, whether people like it or not, it's changing, and we are going to have new citizens here, new kids, new students, and we need to figure out how to keep them safely educated in safe schools and new facilities.
Okay, Cam?
That's what we're doing. Believe it or not, what I think the issue is, and it's actually not really a fault of anyone, is that we've distilled our children down to skip test scores. And it has nothing to do with previous administrations, nothing to do with teachers, nothing to do with who's on the board, who's not on the board. We've distilled our children down to test scores, and we've gotten away from what education really should be, which is developing the child for their next step in life. Whether it's through a middle school where they get a little freedom, which I am a huge supporter of as being a scoutmaster, giving the kids freedom to make their mistakes, to grow, or whether it's just for teaching them how to learn. Because a test score does not define a child, and there's no place to lay that blame other than sort of, I mean, like you said the other night, probably No Child Left Behind when Kennedy and Bush did that, but really just how we've changed our focus, and that's something that as a board to challenge, and as a city and as a community, we need to address going forward.
Great, Shara?
I think that one of the main things not being addressed involves the community and the way that the board interacts with the community and the way the board communicates with the community at large. I think that the board needs to make themselves more transparent. I think things like live streaming and taking questions directly from the community, just like we're doing here, is a very,
sounds like a great idea.
so it's a very important thing. I think I talked about this a couple of years ago. There's ways to do outreach to the community and get the opinions of the community. I've been to board meetings, so I've seen that there's a handful of people that consistently show up. I think that in the big picture, the board needs to make themselves more available while they're doing their functions to the community at large, so that the community can then be a part of what the board is trying to accomplish for them. So I think it's a partnership that needs to be more tightly controlled in many, many areas.
So there are definitely a lot of pressing issues, and I kind of feel different all about them, but student achievement and retaining our teachers, core foundation, right? When we think about the overcrowding in schools, we think about, all the test scores, we think about all these other elements, right? It comes down to our teachers, and it comes down to student achievement, especially when we think about special education up close. It's near and dear to my heart. We have such a pressing issue of children, not just necessarily special needs, but that social emotional management that our children really truly need to be successful. I really think that those are two issues that we need to take a deeper look at, and what are the root causes to some of those issues. And I think we're all talking about some of those root causes now.
All right.
Obviously, most important is going to be a tough one. The most important is anything that has to do with safety of our children, which is the facilities. All right. Obviously, where my background is, facilities is my area. Done a number of projects for schools, charter schools, state schools, number of them. I understand that. I also understand the way that we can streamline our construction process with the schools. The other thing that's almost as pressing as that, because the safety of our students is important, but also the education. Like I said previously, our teachers are one of the lowest paid in the state. That's a problem. There's lists of teachers that are leaving for better positions, even over in Jersey City. We need to get into that contract with them and look at the grade. There's teachers that could be teaching for 12 years that only see I think $7,000 to $10,000 increase over 10 years. That's embarrassing as a district that we treat our teachers that way. That is right there with facilities as one of the most important things that we have to address. We have to compensate our teachers because so many of them are there not getting paid, coming out of their pocket for stuff that schools should be providing, like classroom items. I'm on a cliffhanger there with classroom. Let's finish that one.
Yeah. Classroom items. That was classroom items.
There we go.
All right. Leo.
Yes, Bayonne School District, 10,300 students. 15% of that special needs students, the most needy in our district. Our child study teams, I believe there are 4 district-wide, including the high school. The caseload of these child study teams is unimaginable. Unimaginable. We need to support the special needs students so they make those social and academic adjustments year by year and become productive members of our society, whether it's academics, whether it's putting them in a business atmosphere, these students will thrive. But they need the resources and they need that early intervention. And right now, with 4 child study teams, and 1 is at the high school, 3 child study teams are taking care of some 1,000 students approximately, district-wide at the elementary level. We need to do a better job there.
The biggest challenge facing the district is actually the budget. Everybody has said valid points here. What's going on in the special needs community is a travesty, how little they get with what they get. What's happening to our buildings, they're falling apart in some places. We need to do that. We need to ensure that we do hire the most qualified teachers and hang on to them. Those are all things that we all can agree on, but it's how we manage the money that's going to get us to that point. We have a safety and security issue that we haven't even addressed yet as far up here, is that how do we balance having cops and armed guards in our buildings, yet having a safe and welcoming environment? That takes time and energy. It takes people and money. So the big issue is how do we watch our money? How do we spend it? How do we appropriate it properly so we can address these needs in a timely fashion?
Thank you, trustee. Please.
I agree with many of the people up on this dais tonight. We seem to be losing some pretty amazing teachers by the 4th or 5th year in, and we're losing them to other districts. We have to figure out a way of holding them with us because they are a direct impact on our scores, our students, everything that happens within our district. We also need to find a way of special education programs that have been cut. For some reason, when you have an IEP, you're not entitled to every service that there is for other students, such as 100-book challenge and math tutoring. I cannot understand why we would want to stifle any child from trying to excel past what their goals are in an IEP by attending the 100-book challenge and reading better by the end of his or her year, or by getting some extra math. Different things that need to be addressed.
Anything further on this topic? Yes.
Real quick, obviously my son, I said, had an IEP, so his second grade teacher actually found out he was dyslexic. And what I found was he doesn't qualify for a 100-book challenge because he qualifies to work with Ms. Harrington, who's the reading specialist. So he gets that reading help because of his IEP. So the program's 100-book challenge, to my knowledge, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, is for those that need the help that do not have an IEP. My son gets it through Ms. Harrington. Now the budget, we just said the budget was the most pressing item, but he just mentioned that we were stable. So I'm trying to figure out which one it is. Are we stable or is the budget the item?
Yes.
Two points on that. As far as it's stable means that we're solvent, but we're going to have to reinflate the budget. That we have to start doing those things. We have to address the problems that people are talking about. That's the big one. As far as hanging on to teachers, I would point out that we just settled a 4-year contract with the teachers. We are making efforts to do that. Now, hopefully we can work with the union so that we can push some of the money down to keep the younger teachers, because that's always been a problem, the bubble step. And so how that's going to happen, I don't know, but that's a matter for negotiations between the union and the board as we go forward.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, when you had mentioned that maintaining security with police officers on campus and being open and welcoming, my experience simply at Lincoln is that the police officer is awesome, super welcoming, and it's actually not even an issue.
So the teacher's contract was settled, we're in the 2nd year of that, correct? I believe we're in the 2nd year of that, which means in the next 2 years, we will be negotiating the same teacher's contract issues that we were again. So the board that you elect this year will likely be the people that are negotiating that contract. So some of the, I think, concerns with regard to that are, again, your conflicts, right? That becomes an issue. And so it's not what is happening right now at this time. It is what's happening, in the next 3 years.
Sorry. All right, so we're going to switch gears, and Corey's going to ask one. We're going to start with Leo.
Do you have a plan to retain teachers and keep their salaries competitive?
I think one of the biggest plans would to retain them might have to do with traffic. People, about half of our teaching population live out of town. I believe there are approximately 800 teachers. about 400 of them are not Bayonne residents. They live out of town, and God bless them, and they fight that traffic day in and day out. And when I was in the position of vice principal and as assistant superintendent for business, the biggest reason we were losing some of our qualified people is that the commute just beat the hell out of them. They couldn't do it anymore during those rush hour days. And it's still going on. But to retain them, incentives, a better pay scale at the lower end, maybe breaking up the bubble. And the bubble is something that has been part of the Bayonne Teachers Agreement. I'm there 44 years, 48 years. It goes back and back and back, and it was a way to reward people at the end of their careers to build up something of a nest egg in their pension.
Thank you. Trustee.
I'm very hopeful that the next time we have a contract, we can attack that bubble. We have new leadership in both the unions and new leadership in the board itself. So with any luck at all, they'll come to a settlement that will help us to retain teachers. But at the end of the day, that's what's going to keep people here, when they feel that they are adequately compensated for the trouble, for getting here, for doing their job, and going home. So it's going to come down to negotiations.
Okay, Lisa.
I agree. Negotiations are going to be very important this coming contract. Teachers here in town are making less money than they were 10 years ago because of course, the health insurance issue. Somebody needs to advocate for them. Somebody needs to help fix that issue with Chapter 78. No one should bring home less money than what they were making 10 years ago. We need to fix this bubble. We need to go at it straight on and try and retain these teachers to stay here. We're losing them to every other district. And there's no way that it's going to help our children with succeeding.
Thank you.
I just recently also found out that some teachers are getting promoted, but then having to pay more back for their health care, and they're actually taking home less money, and that is absolutely absurd. That should never happen to anybody. Nobody should worry about how they're going to pay their kids' medical costs and deal with these healthcare figures. We have to look at this. We need to look at ways to support our teachers. I also think we could do better providing better things in the classroom, more support for them in the classroom, things they need so they're not paying out of pocket for things. I think we just could do a lot better job.
Thank you.
So obviously, everybody's talking about the bubble step, and the vast majority of our teachers, I think it's something like about 100 of them right now, sit at max. And as you look down and I found on the board website, as you look down, you'll see that a lot of teachers are lower level or lower step teachers. We have 0 here, 0 there, because it's not financially viable for them to stay. So what do? Well, you work with the union and you negotiate a fairer situation for their membership. You look to showing them that you're interested in their problems. For example, healthcare. They are now paying, I think it's 20 or 30% of their premium. I have to look. It wasn't on my notes. So that was money that was going into their paychecks, and now is going into health insurance because of what different changes down the state. Our former governor. So the key is that you have to be in partnership with the teachers and the teachers union, and you have to be able to negotiate the contract. If you have family, you can't negotiate the contract.
Well, I think the contract is one aspect of it that you have to look at, the healthcare costs. I think that exists in every industry, right? Everybody feels the effects of that in one way or another, and those are real valid things. But at the end of the day, if you're creating an environment where a teacher feels like they can make a difference and they're given the environment where they can go in and they can work with a student, and they have the tools they need to work with that student, and they feel fulfilled at the end of the day with what they did, they're more likely to stay here. There's a music teacher that left and went to another district a couple of years ago. And, I think about what he did and his impact with my own personal student, and it was amazing. It was amazing. But he didn't feel like that could continue because there's such downward pressure in the district. And I don't think he felt fully supported. And we need to have teachers that feel like this is an environment they can thrive in and they can make a difference. People don't leave jobs that fulfill them. They just don't.
So the contracts are important, really supporting our teachers. Chapter 78 relief I can't imagine, I'm not a teacher, and I can't imagine paying what they pay out of pocket. I really can't. And the fact that I hear these stories and I hear teachers struggle, like that's not okay. They're the foundation for our children. I believe in partnerships. I believe that if we can expand those relationships as trustees to our teachers, really listen to what they have to say, listen to the union president, really come together, I truly believe that we can make different decisions on behalf of them as well. We need to be representatives for these teachers. Our money problems aren't really their problems. We have to figure this out. How are we seeking out grants and reallocating from other areas so that we can give more to our teachers and be able to support them in their professional development goals and where they want to go ahead of time? Are we really thinking about what are the next steps for each teacher and administrator if possible?
Thank you. Anthony?
I think one of the big things is everybody says benefits, but I don't know how many people understand that these teachers, if they have a family, they're paying into their benefit plan. They don't get family benefits until, I believe, 3 years or tenure. So you're paying into a system that you're not even able to use it. So that's something that I understand that that's with the contract. That's going to be with negotiation with the new leadership. I think the new leadership in place is a little bit more forward thinking than the old leadership in place that I think focused more on the top and not the bottom or the middle. So with that, I mean, as a guy in the private industry, I think I pay 50% of my premium. I look at my paycheck. The biggest thing besides the government taking my money is my benefits. My biggest thing when I go look for a new job is what's the benefit package more than the salary. If we can get our teachers to where they come in, yeah, I wait 3 months at a new job. These guys are waiting 3 years, sometimes 4 years for their family to get coverage, but they're still paying into it. So if you can take care of the benefit package, that will allow you some time with salary, but you still have to work on it. So you have to be able to be in there and negotiate for it.
All right, anything else? Okay.
Chapter 78 provides for anywhere from 20 to 35% of the cost of the premium. As Anthony said, teachers do not get family coverage. They get single coverage until they attain tenure, at which time they might see a very big increase in their health care. Now, Chapter 78, which Chris Christie brought in 2008, I believe expired, and it is a negotiable item. So the board needs to sit down with the teachers, and as Melissa said, get some Chapter 78 relief for these people, because
Anyone else? Okay, so I'm going to ask one now. We're going to start with Lisa. So what shared services or other sort of agreements with the county, with the city, and with private nonprofits do you think the Board of Education could embark on or improve their finances and programs?
I feel personally that the special education programs do need some help. There are many private industries out there. There are private companies that are coming into our town. There are non-for-profit companies that will partner with us to help these children. There are so many different levels of a disability now. Years ago, it was just one or the other kind of. We need to focus on the children that are kind of in between, that should not be in a self-contained classroom, but should not be in a regular gen ed class, and offer more services to help them excel, to one day get out of an inclusion classroom. For some reason, the board thought it was wise to take away resource from our students. That was because they were putting too many children into the most restrictive environment, and they were cited in a lawsuit by the state. They took away resource room that would have benefited just a small group of children, but it still would have benefited them.
Time. Melissa.
Oh, I'm sorry, you went this way? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I thought you went.
Okay.
My apologies.
No problem.
My husband and I started a nonprofit specifically so that we can bring in donations and start community gardens and educational projects throughout the city. So the garden is our first project. We're doing the sign language program. We are the kind of people that want to do things. Our friends want to donate things. And so I think that we can bring a lot of really cool clubs and programs into our city by people that want a partnership. A lot of these people don't want to pay taxes, the developers, but they'll take the tax cut, or not tax cut, sorry, they'll take the rebate, like if they give a donation. So you can get money coming in that way, repair the planetarium and bring somebody in to do that. Make partnerships with private companies through nonprofits and just through the private companies. We can do a lot that way. People want to do it.
Well, so with the county, I have no, the county gutted our vote tech program 20 years ago or so, because they decided to open up their own schools, and we send 2 kids here, 3 kids here. So I don't see a real opportunity for, I mean, maybe if you can negotiate it, but a real opportunity for partnering with the county, because we're just one in a sea of voices up there. But like my running mate said, there's certainly corporations that would want to partner with an educational body, because they want their name on that wall. That's God's honest truth. They want, I keep talking about the planetarium, because to me it's like this awesome thing we had that lay fallow for years because of budget constraints and damage to it. But I'm sure there's got to be a tech company that would love to have their name over that door, and we're not doing that. And then talk about partnering with the city, I think was part of the question. Well, the ice rink was damaged, was down, and the city partnered with the Board of Ed at the time and was able to get the funding to rehab it. So there's opportunities there as long as we communicate, and that's what comes after.
John?
Well, I think that there are a lot of programs that we should offer in addition to what we have now. I'm a huge proponent, anybody who knows me knows this, I'm a huge proponent of the trade program. My son's a carpenter in his 5th year. That is a direct correlation to a teacher in the Bayonne High School. There's a direct line between Mr. McGuckin and what my son does now, and I think that's hugely important. Trade is important. There's a subset of students that college is not their path, and we need to open up the trade programs to give those students an opportunity to fulfill themselves. I think we should have more coding programs. I think we should have more cybersecurity programs, tech programs, things that kids can get into that will engage them in the environment in the school. It's not always just about math, science, English. Expand their knowledge base and make them a bigger part of the school. I think there's a lot of room to do that kind of work for them.
So over 2 years and seeing and listening to what's been going on at board meetings, I do believe the board currently does provide some partnerships with these non-for-profits, and they do get some of that grants and funding. I just think we could do a much better job at it. I think that we can go ahead and reach out to these developers, reach out to these companies on the county with our, Nick Schiavotti and Angela McKnight, and get them on board with us, because that opens up resources. When you bring a community together in all different levels of a community, think about how much more we have at our fingertips. And I think that's where I see a huge opportunity to bring in all these other services, build new relationships, especially as a trustee, to be able to go and shake hands with somebody and say, how can we make this community better together? I think that would come with funding. I think that would come with donations, and having that type of representation on the board would be very important.
Thank you.
Real quick, can you say that question again? Because some of these answers, it seems like we're getting away from the main topic, and I just want to say that question again.
Yeah, you can hear it again, no problem. So we're looking at improving the school district. I was talking about shared service agreements with the county or the city, as well as nonprofits. How do you think that they could integrate that into the budget and other sorts of financial plans?
Well, I believe from obviously being at the meetings that we do have a shared services with the city for the benefits program. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Smith, I believe you were still in for that. But I remember that being a topic with the previous teachers' representation with the equal or greater value. So I believe that they already started working with the city by combining the city employees as well as the Board of Ed employees with the benefit program to reduce the cost. So we already have that partnership there. With the nonprofits, I mean, listen, we can all say we want nonprofits to give us this, give us that, give us that. Our house has to be in order first. We need to work with the city on co-services even further, facilities, DPW, working something like that out where we can maintain our facilities together, because our facilities are still in the city. So I would work with those, and I think those need to be continued. The benefits are already working, I believe, because it already reduced the cost, but then also working with the facilities, with the DPW, as well as our maintenance staff, and also outside contractors.
We did have shared services with the city in regards to the prescription plan. The city and the board employees were together on the same plan, I believe, for a 2-year period. I don't know if the board and the city did renew that after I left. It was profitable for the board at the time. It did generate some much needed funds. The ice rink is another prime example of where the city came in and refurbished a 30-year-old ice rink. We also work with the county on weekends, you'll see county buses transporting our students. And we get them at a very reduced cost, and it saves the district tens of thousands of dollars in that regard. So those things are there. The other thing that the former superintendent, Dr. McGeehan, used to do, she would hit up all the businesses in Bayonne. She would be out there. She was an advocate. She was getting $10, $20, $30, $50,000 grants from different organizations that were glad to give it to us. That money is dangling out there. We should be going after that low-hanging fruit and bringing it back to the district. And that could be everybody's job.
As Mr. Smith said, a lot of this is ongoing already. If you look at every sign around, those signs that are outside of your schools, they all say it's provided by IMTT or any other number of businesses that are out there. The county also employs a number of our teachers in our vocational programs. Our welding teachers, our automotive teachers, a number of them are actually county employees. This has been an ongoing theme since before I got there, and it's still continuing. We still do partner with the city for the prescription programs. As opportunities present themselves, nobody's saying no. Everybody wants to say yes, and so we're trying to do that. But to think we're gonna float the budget on those partnerships, it's gonna help. You're not gonna turn the money down, but we have to have our own house in order. We have to do our own heavy lifting too.
All right, anything else on this one? Okay, so Corey's gonna ask one more, then we're gonna give the audience a crack at it, and we're gonna start with Trustee Ryan, that way everyone had a chance to start off one.
So do you have any plans to create new programs or improve upon existing programs for special needs children in the district?
We could go forever on this topic. We need a new child study team. As Mr. Smith said, and I've been talking to the parents, it's intolerable how this goes. We have what the parents in the special needs community call ping pong kids. They go from school to school to school to school, first, second, third, fourth grade, never staying in the same one because the inclusion class doesn't exist in their school for the subject they need. We need to take a look at that. The most heartbreaking thing about being a school board trustee has been going to CPAC meetings, the special needs community, and listening to the parents of 4 and 5-year-olds say the same thing that my wife and I went through 27 years ago. That's just wrong. So we can go forever. We start with a child study team. We can look for improvement in inclusion settings, so this way we have more kids staying in their school, taking care of them, and then we could just go, we're off to the races, because it's just one thing after another after another.
Thank you.
The child study team is definitely overwhelmed. The teachers are as well, and they're not receiving the right resources that they need. But the board has got to see that these two areas are overwhelmed and need support and are not getting it just by looking at how many mediations they're going to, how many kids are being sent out of district, or how many lawsuits are being brought to the city, to the Board of Education. Somebody needs to start watching everything as a whole, not just relying on the superintendent to make sure everything is going well. Definitely need more child study team administrators, but we need somebody to watch over what's going on with them.
Thank you.
I would agree, child study is a huge problem. I have my own personal experience with that. They need better support, they need better training. I also think that, it's hard, well, to be honest, I personally would want to put more money towards special education. I think it's incredibly important. But as a special needs parent, I also see that. I think that I would lean heavily on experts because I don't know all of the disabilities. So I would need to take a look at what programs are out there. I'm not the best. I know high functioning autism. That's pretty much my house. So I'd have to find more about programs that are available to expand.
Okay. Jim?
I would love to disagree with Trustee Ryan because I'm running against him, but I have to agree with him. I mean, child study teams are the end, the beginning of the end. Because if you don't have the kids classified correctly, if you don't have their IEP rated correctly, then any other program is just noise. So we have to start with the most basic services for our special needs children, and then we can talk about other things. And until that's fixed, it's a moot point. And I can give you a list of 1,000 things, but it doesn't matter. If the kids aren't getting the right services, the kids aren't getting the right help that they need, then it's not going to work. And like my running mate said, it's not just child study teams are overwhelmed. The teacher, there's just so many different disabilities. The ping pong kids, which is a term I only learned a few weeks ago, that's just, it's amazing to me that we're failing the kids that need us the most. And it's a systemic problem, not an individual problem. It's not like you can point at 5 people and say, those 5 people are the bad guys. It's a problem that needs to be tackled as a whole. Together we can. I mean, that's out there.
Yeah, like Jan, I've, learned a lot in the last few weeks, going to the CPAC meeting and listening to those parents speak. And I would say that it's clear that we are underserving a segment of our community, which is extremely unfortunate. The one thing that came clear to me in that conversation was that there's definitely a lack of communication between what the family believes they need and what the student is receiving and what the child study team can deliver. And I think that communication needs to be opened up and made more clear between the parties so that could take place. It does take some board oversight. It does take some focus. The superintendent is going to do the job he's going to do, and I'm sure he's going to do a great job. He's got to get into those groups and figure out what's going on and then figure out how he can make it better. But as a board, we need to make sure that we're holding him accountable to doing that. He is the only employee that we have that we hold accountable, and we just need to make it a priority on the board that he is doing that work.
So the special education enrollment itself is a problem. I think today it still stands at 14.6%. As our children grow and services change and the needs change of each one of these children, regardless of how many you have, I think we need to somebody should be advocating to look at that formula. 2 board meetings ago, I presented a solution. It's called Effective School Solutions to the board, where it would bring in services for our children, cut back on some out-of-district costs. I don't think it's the solution to other needs at all. My son is multiple disabled and medically disabled. We deal with multiple diagnoses, and I can tell you, I don't think that's the solution for him. But it is a solution to keep kids here, get the services they need, because not only does that positively impact our special education kids, but it positively impacts the students that surround those children. So now they're inclusive, now they're working together, now they feel like they're on level playing fields. I do think that training and development as well for our aides, and not just first-year teachers, because I have found that to be an opportunity. We're offering training for first-year teachers, not teachers that may have always been in the role for 30 years who may need some retraining. And I think that we have a long way to go, but we should be thinking about solutions and not always the problems.
I mean, look, the common theme, obviously, as you've seen across the board, is obviously with the child studies team. Obviously, there's not enough. So many people can only handle so much. I mean, I believe it's 1,500 students in special ed. 2 teams of 4 people is not going to be able to handle that and that IEP. You got to figure a way to expand on that, even if it means involving the inclusion teachers even more and developing it and holding them accountable. Now, I mean, we have directors, we have people in charge of these departments, obviously working with the superintendent, making sure they're accountable for doing their job is going to be key, and adding to it, because again, the burden on them is tremendous. I sat in a meeting when my son got diagnosed with dyslexia, and the advocate from Princeton was phenomenal. The child studies team's like, well, we need time, we have this time to do it, we have this time to do it. Understood, but if you have more people, you're able to produce more services that need to get done to the kids that need them in a much quicker time than the 60 days. So you need somebody to just hold their directors accountable.
As I said previously about the child study teams, I think I was the first to bring that to the forefront here. 15% of our total population, 1,500 students. Does anybody know how many students we actually bus out of district? 36, which speaks volumes about the dedication of our teaching staff, our aides, our whole special ed department. People actually move to the city of Bayonne to partake in the special ed program, so their students won't fall between those cracks. We've found that out, but we still must do a better job. And the key to that is the federal government and the state of New Jersey upping the ante in the special ed, special needs budget, so those students get every service that they're entitled to.
Thank you. Anything before we give you okay?
Just showing some love to the other special need parents. At the last CPAC meeting, the president, Amy Vieira, brought to my attention how many special need parents were running for office. I in turn brought that to Mr. Neese today. said, if that doesn't tell you how the special needs community feels about their special needs department, nothing else will. And he said, I hear you. So democracy is working, folks. An elected board is already having its effect.
All right, thank you. So we're almost there. We're in the home stretch. So just going to look to the audience now for anyone who would like to ask a question. Anybody interested? Please. Would you like to get up and just
That'd
stand?
be great if you could stand up so the audience can hear you.
So, I wrote down a couple of words. I try to combine everything into one question, just to try to bring everything back together. So stability, conflict, and then the budget. So when the budget was last passed, it was reduced. So that had an impact on our staff. So I'm looking at, we're down roughly 30 plus teachers in the district. Classroom sizes are growing. 10,000 plus students in the district. More will be coming with all of the growth. Plus teachers are leaving the district in pretty big numbers. A few left right early in the beginning of the year because they picked up a better job for better pay. So with less competitive pay, looking at the classroom sizes, the impact, the stress on the students themselves and everything, how is this going to be rectified, moving this all together? Fixing the classroom sizes, competitive salaries, and then figuring out how do we kind of loop this all together.
It sounds like this guy takes notes. So we're going to start with Charlotte, and we'll just go straight down the line.
Mr. Woods, thank you for your question. It's a really good one, and I think that's the quandary that everybody finds themselves in, whether they're on the board or they're running for the board, right? There's so many different approaches to things, and I think that the answer lies in actually figuring out ways. It all comes down to budget and money, right? At the end of the day, we have to pay the teachers. We have to look at the steps. We have to look at the way, the fact is, that a teacher could teach, they get an advanced degree, they spend a small fortune on that, and they can teach for 10 years and get an increase in salary of $100. That's gone in taxes, right? There's a large period of time where those teachers are getting married, having kids, doing all the things that live their lives, right? And they can't afford to do those things and stay here. So we have to really look, it has to come from the budget. We have to look at the budget. You do have to have a balanced budget, but you have to find ways to make your money go further and be smarter about how you spend it and what you spend it on to benefit the teachers.
So I guess that some of the root cause here is a money problem. And I said earlier, I don't think our teachers should pay for our money problems. I think that comes down to money management and allocation, and where are we really looking at where we can save to give back to these teachers. When you're talking about, growing class sizes, it does stress the teacher out. What teacher wouldn't want to go to another district? And that might be one of the best teachers we have. I grew up in this district. I had some of the best teachers. I can name all K-8 teachers and high school teachers till this day. I want my son to be able to do the same because those are the teachers making the impact. I think when you think about pay, just like any other professional job in my world, I am competitive. I want your skill set, what you know, where you've been, what you bring, matches your pay. I am for that totally. I think that line by line is important before we get to that step, but we can't keep using money as an excuse not to make sure that we have the best, because that in turn will come with people investing back into our communities.
Thank you.
Mr. Woods, I think the simple answer to how we're going to be competitive and how we're going to handle the class size, it's going to come down to the negotiation table between the board and yourself. So it's going to come down to what can we work out, what can we talk about in the budget that we can maybe move something around, because I've experienced this, and Coach Luciani will tell you, we thought that the district hired a teacher that could come in and be an assistant on the wrestling staff. Guess what? I think it was Pompton Lakes, offered him a job literally, I think, a week before school starts. So now we're out an assistant coach as well as a business teacher for the district because we just can't match it. So as much as everybody can say, oh, we'll look at the budget, we'll find money, it's going to be when we come down to sit down at the table, which should happen. If we're 2 years in, it should already be starting right now to start that conversation so that it's not a big push in year 3 to get a deal done. So it would come down to us sitting down, talking, going over what we're willing to budge on and what we're willing to play with so that we can make it happen. Because I don't want to see teachers leave before they even take a job anymore.
As Mr. Woods alluded to, the budget was cut this year. I believe the increase on the local tax levy was 1.1%, where the board had the option to go up to a full 2% before going to taxpayers for their approval. That equates to almost another $600,000 that could have been in the budget, okay, and was not put in the budget. This is how we got into the quandary years ago, where it was dictated by the city to give 0% on the municipal side of the tax levy. And that's what led us to some of our financial problems, okay? We were never in a true deficit. That was an accounting misnomer, so to speak. But the way to do it now is to fully fund that 2% and then use that extra, if you're getting by with 1.1, putting it away for salary negotiations, where there would be a little more in that pie, and then we might be able to retain those good teachers.
Thank you. Trustee?
For the record, I was the one who voted, I was one of two who voted for the higher tax increase to address what you're saying, along with a host of others. We have to begin reinflating the budget. We have to begin bringing in enough money, and that's the heavy lift, that's the hard part. That's what we all have to do if we want to have a good school system. That said, it's all about negotiations. It's about what, we have new leadership with the union. We have an elected board. Now, for the first time last year, everybody's elected. I'm cautiously optimistic that 2 years from now, we'll have a budget that can support a contract that will make the teachers happy and that will keep the taxpayers happy. We'll see what happens.
Thank you.
Stability and conflict are two direct words that come with your budget. We definitely, as everybody has set up here at the table, we need to have a reasonable and fair conversation with the union when it's time for negotiations. We have to figure out if we are now stable. We have to figure out how much of that money is there that we can use to allocate towards the renegotiations, as well as find additional funds to keep the teachers here in our district.
Very good.
So many things go into this question. So class sizes are growing because people are coming in, and until we can get them space, how do we sort of alleviate that? We need to take care of our teachers, and maybe by adding aides, I'm not entirely sure how that goes into the mix. Bottom line, we need to pay them more, and I'm not afraid to do what would need to be done if we need to inflate the budget and do the full tax. But I think that our teachers are the most important thing in the system. They're why we're all here, the kids and the teachers, and they need to be taken care of, and they need to be in an environment where they feel like they are fully supported, and that this city and the parents and everybody on the board is behind them, because that they are the ones that are teaching our children every day, and they're taking care of our kids, and we owe that to them.
Thank you, Jim.
So you get what you pay for, right? So without a doubt, I'd be in favor of the full 2%. It's not gonna, maybe I wouldn't have any votes by saying that, but I'd be in favor of the 2% because you have to have the money to be flexible enough. If you don't have the cash flow, you don't have the money, you can't be flexible enough. So the second part is, I said in the beginning, you get what you pay for. So 80% of the budget goes to salary and benefits. So there's not that other 20%. You're not going to find that much savings there to really make a dent in what we do to make our teacher salaries competitive. So the 2% starts that way. Of course, you look at the other 20%, but there's $600,000 here. I mean, it's real money, but it's not going to do what we need to do. That's why we keep talking about public-private partnerships. We keep talking about, looking outside of our district for other funding opportunities. You take all that together, and maybe you got something.
Fine.
Yeah, but just going back to that real quick, this all goes back to the pilots as well. Because the standard formula on the taxes is 40% automatically is earmarked to the schools. With these pilots, it's only 10%. The city is telling us what they can give us extra. If we were getting the 40%, that's the standard tax rate, that's money the city can't include in their budget. That's money that's earmarked towards the school. So that's actually what would inflate the budget, is if we got that percentage back from the city. Okay, you can't find money because the money that was there, the 40% from every single taxable piece of property, is no longer coming in with these big developments. So,
but that's assuming you had the money in the first place. Last year, that money wasn't there. So you can say all you want, well, we need 40%, we need 40%. But if the project doesn't make dollars and cents, they may not build. So without you or I knowing the ins and outs of each deal, it's crazy to say that. You're right, we should get more money from some of these pilots. But the converse is that piece of property could lay empty. The MOT was turned over what? Correct me if I'm wrong, 15, 20 years ago? We've only started seeing building within the last maybe 5 or 10. For years, that property did nothing for the city.
Yes, trustee.
At the end of the day, the city could be running $100 million surplus, and they couldn't give the Board of Education more than 2% without the voters' approval. Because we make a budget, and we can't go above 2% tax increase without the voters' approval. We couldn't spend the money without that budget. So all the part about the pilots are valid in the city council. They're not valid on the Board of Ed. We make a budget. We send the city a bill. That's just how that works. That's state law.
Yes, sir.
But when you don't go to the full 2%, example, the 1.1% this year, next year when you do go to the 2%, it's not on that full amount. So you're losing it almost twice. So that's the reason why you need to do at least 2% a year and then work within your budget, put that money away for contract settlements.
Thank you. Does anyone else from the audience have anything? Okay, seeing none, we're just gonna go to our closing arguments. We're gonna start with Leo, and we'll go clockwise. 1 minute each. I'll give you guys some leeway, but let's try to keep it, minute and a half tops. Go ahead.
Okay, like I said, resident, 66 years, come from a family of service here in the city of Bayonne. My mother and father, my father was a detective, my mother a nurse in the emergency room for over 40 years, knew many of the family histories of Bayonne. I have a brother who's a doctor, a sister who's a nurse, my daughter's a teacher, my wife is a nurse. People said, you retired, why would you want to come back? And at the time I retired, I said, I'd like to spend more time with my family. Unbeknownst to me, they didn't want to spend that much time with me. I still feel I have gas in the tank. I still feel like I have a lot to offer this great city that allowed me to set up a home, to build a home, to have a family, to educate my children K through 12 in the Bayonne public school system. I did not send them anywhere else. I figured if I was working there, then it had to be good enough for them. So I would appreciate if you'd get out to vote, tell your friends, and even if you don't vote for me, folks, they're all good people up here. You don't get into this trying to be vain. Everybody's heart is in the right spot. But if you don't like what they said, 11D, Leo Smith, God bless you and God bless America. Thank you.
Charlie Ryan, I've been a citizen of Bayonne all my life, 62 years old, 31 years with the Bayonne Police Department, 7 years running the DARE program. I was a teacher before I did that. I'm married to Alana Metis Ryan, who's been a vice principal and a teacher for over 40 years. We have 3 children all over the place. One of whom graduated summa cum laude. He's a teacher up in Union City, teaches musical theater. Our pride and joy, though, is our middle child, who is a graduate of the special needs program at Bayonne, and she will always be a special needs person. But I will tell you, and my wife agrees, she's the smartest person in the family. The workarounds that she does just to come up with what she comes up with are absolutely amazing. I'm in this because I want to be part of a cultural change. We went from an appointed board to an elected board. That's what I want to continue. Things are starting to change. You have special needs parents up here. That's important. And in closing, what Mr. Smith said is absolutely right. There's nobody up here. There's not a bad choice up here. I just happen to think I'm one of the better choices.
Thank you.
Again, my husband and I are lifelong residents of Bayonne. He is a police officer with the city. I am the executive director of the Hudson County Bar Association and Foundation. We have 4 children and 1 grandson, 3 of which are still in the Bayonne public school systems. When we first started having issues with our kids, our first instinct was to look elsewhere, look at other school districts that have better programs. And at one point we said to each other, what are we doing? This is where we come from. This is where we live. We have to fix what's going on here. We're moving in the right direction. It needs to move faster. The town is changing. Our schools need to change. We want to be part of that. Again, together we can. I am 13D, if you would vote for us.
Nothing, there's no law that says you have to be from Bayonne to love this city. I understand that you guys have been born and raised here, and I think that's amazing. And that's one of the things I love about this place is that this is such a great city, and that's why people, stay. And that's why I'm here, choosing to be here with my family and raise my 4 kids here. I think a lot of us are talking about, the relationship with the city and the citizens and all that stuff. And I think that the 3 of us are best to bridge that gap and make that happen. Education is huge for me. My one son has special needs, so I can see both sides of the coin here. And I think that my involvement in the city just shows for itself. I have the garden, I've got the sign language going. I just think that we're the right people to do this. You want to look at people who can get it done, because a lot of us share the same ideas up here. So we're the team that can actually do something, not just talk about it repeatedly.
Thank you. Yeah.
So 12D, 13D, 14D, together again. So you know what? I want to be part of the change. I see things in the city moving in the right direction, and it kills me that all of a sudden now we decide we all shouldn't be pulling the same direction. That we need people who are independent here and no relationships there, and that's crazy. The reason Bayonne has always been strong is because we had a common goal. We worked together, and that's why I think it is. I mean, I teach my scouts that they work with their patrol to get the job done, whether it's to set up a tent, lash the rope bridge, or cook their meal. And athletes, coaches teach their teams the same thing, working together. Whether it's a practice, working on a double leg takedown, like I'm sure Coach Anthony's teaching the kids, they work together. That's what I believe. And to me, it's just crazy that we talk about, trying to be separate and we fight amongst ourselves. And I don't want to work with that one, or this shouldn't be part of this and should go. It's crazy because we're not going to move forward unless we all pull in the same direction.
Thank you.
Sharma Montgomery, I'm 10D. I agree, you don't have to be born in Bayonne to be committed to Bayonne, having not been born here myself. But my husband's family, he's born and raised here, and we chose to move back here as well. When we left the Air Force, we came back to Bayonne. I have 2 children that graduated Bayonne. I'm a huge fan of the schools. I have a lot of friends who are teachers. I've spent a lot of time volunteering with arts and music and theater, and work with other community groups as well. So I'm committed to the community and seeing that we do move forward. I do believe that it is important to have a board that has an independent point of view. I do think you could still work together and have an independent and unconflicted view. You need multiple points of view to actually represent an entire community. And if everybody comes from the same stock, then you will never get that varied degree in view. The city is representative of multiple points of view, and we need the board to reflect what the city is right now. And I think it can't all be everybody's connected to City Hall and everybody's rowing in the same direction, because those other points of view matter and those people matter. And I think that I'm the right person to represent some of those people. So it's 10D. Thank you.
All right, very good.
I'm Melissa Gutowski Rodriguez. I'm 3D on the ballot. I am born and raised. My husband is not. My husband followed me here. We had our son here and we're raising him here. Yes, have I had concerns because I don't know what direction my son is heading in. I don't know what his future holds, but I want to know that I am making sure I'm part of the process of giving him and every other kid that he is surrounded by, different needs or not, the same opportunity. My entire life I've been giving back to this community. When I was a young kid, I'd stay after school and help other kids because our demographic in the city, we're so diverse. I cannot tell you just in Lincoln School alone how many different types of children, families, cultures we come from. We truly are a melting pot here. And I agree with Sharma, like we need to have different perspectives of what we want the city to look like and what we want our system to look like. I think we all want to work with the city, and I think we all can work to the city. I think it's really when we focus on the community and we listen, it really is about what matters most. And we have kids here. We're all taxpayers, we're all part of this community, and our teachers and our staff are the true foundation of that, and we need people who can advocate. And I promise that I will advocate for every person in this community like I advocate for my own. Like if it was me, if I was that teacher, if I was that aide, if I was that student, because somebody did it for me, I want to do that for everybody back. So please consider voting for 3D, and there really isn't a bad choice.
Thank you. Anthony, bring us home.
Yeah. It's nice always being last because you get to say what you want and then walk out. So obviously, 2D on the ballot. The one thing I heard a lot today was, like opinions. Very same thought process. A team is made up of unique individuals coming together to work as a team. Not all like-minded people, because then you're not improving. There's nobody there. It's a bunch of yes men, and that's something that I think the board needs to get away from, because I believe we do have those. I believe the board has people that literally just want a title, and obviously we saw what was done to maintain that title on the board. I believe the time is now for new leadership that is non-conflicted and willing to do what it takes to put the children, teachers, and staff first. A lot of people talk about children and teachers, but we have full engineering, construction personnel, you have faculty, that aides and everything that, a lot of time gets overlooked. Everybody has to have a voice. And if you've seen me for the past 4 years, I know everybody says I'm a big tough guy at the meetings and this and that. Yes and no at the same time, all right? When I fight for my kids, I guess I learned it from my mother, because having ADHD and being raised by a single mom, all right, and a lot of family help, I would get in trouble, because back then special needs was not what it is now. They thought you were a troublemaker, all right? So I always come off as a hard ass, but at the same time, I will go to bat for anybody in this town, any kid, just like they're my own. And I have done it in the past by stepping up and challenging the board for the past 4 years at meetings, unlike a lot of people up here. So 2D, and then anybody else, as long as you vote 2D, I'm good.
All right, outstanding. So first of all, I think it's only fair that we have a round of applause for these great candidates. A good time for them. And just to call it a night, thank you again, Mark. We couldn't do it without it. We had 75 live viewers at one point, so thank you, everyone that's watching us in Facebook land. Thank you, everyone, for being an outstanding audience. Nobody yelled out. Nobody pulled the fire alarm. That's really good. And come to HudsonCountyView.com. No offense, Al, but I think we'll be the first one to have the election results on November 5th. And remember, bad times don't last, but bad guys do. That's why you need me and I need you. Have a great night.